Phenomenal. Could be another number one draft pick. This is what the national experts are saying about Miami's Carson Beck.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Miami Hurricanes radio network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets right now. On this episode of Locked On Canes, we'll talk about second-year breakout candidates at Miami. ESPN made their pick on which second-year Cane is going to break out. We'll talk about other candidates. Meanwhile, there's a new, very famous Miami Hurricanes football fan, UFC President Dana White. Welcome to the U. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about updates on the Notre Dame quarterback situation because the guy we thought was going to be their starter may not be the one who wins that job. Meanwhile, we all know who QB1 is of the Miami Hurricanes. And you guys have heard me for the past several weeks, the past several months, talking about Carson Beck, but especially the past few weeks since he's made his training camp debut. I've been able to put eyes on Carson Beck throwing footballs for the first time. And for what it's worth, what has stood out to me about Beck, first and foremost, seeing him the first handful of practices out there, his arm looks great. NFL caliber arm, shows no ill effects or any signs of that elbow surgery that he had during the offseason. And I think what pleasantly surprised me most about Carson Beck is just how engaged he is between plays, working with his teammates, just how much leadership he's showing out there. Like, you can see the veteran presence. But again, I've been talking about this for weeks, and I'm obviously in a bit of a Miami bubble. It's the team that I cover closer by far than any other team in the country. So what are the national folks out there saying? So we've gotten significant updates. Brandon Marcello, national college football analyst from CBS Sports. Pete Nakos, national guy from On3 Sports, who have put out updates on the expectations and the progress of Carson Beck so far, and it's really encouraging stuff. Here's what Brandon Marcello, this is via 24/7 Sports, who has an affiliation with CBS. Here's what Brandon Marcello has said about Carson Beck this week. I'm told Beck just looks phenomenal at Miami, he said. Big-time veteran presence. He was healing up from surgery throughout the offseason. He wasn't able to participate in practice, spring practice, but he was in every meeting. He was meeting with the offensive line. It's starting to show here in their first week of full practices, he says. Marcello continued. I had one person down there tell me that the offensive line is elite. We all know Mario Cristobal loves to build his team around the offensive and defensive lines. If he's got an elite offensive line, that could be big for Beck. So hearing good things. And by the way, just for context, Brandon Marcello doesn't just go around the country and blow smoke on every single quarterback. Because here's what Marcello had to say. I know Miami fans will find this interesting. He also wrote a similar story about Florida State quarterback Tommy Castellanos, who transferred in from Boston College. And on Castellanos, he said, quote, I was told during the first week of practice, going through their first scrimmage, that he's been incredibly inconsistent. And also talked about the Castellanos running his mouth thing. You remember back in, I think it was June or early July, when Tommy, was basically saying, Alabama can't stop me and Nick Saban is not there to save them. And apparently Marcello spent a day with Gus Malzahn, the offensive coordinator, who was like, yeah, don't worry. We talked to Tommy about that. That's not going to happen again. 3 days later, he doubled down, did Castellanos, on his comments about Alabama. So point being, Brandon Marcello is not out there hyping up every single quarterback. He'll be honest with you. He's hearing good things about Carson Beck, not very good things about Tommy Castellanos, and really encouraging stuff on Beck. So here's what On3's Pete Nakos had to say about Beck. We're about, a week and a half now into Hurricanes training camp. Well, actually 2 weeks to the day now. Today, it's 2 Thursdays ago that they started fall practices. He said to Nakos, quote, Shannon Dawson loves him. He thinks he has another number 1 pick in Carson Beck. Shannon Dawson, Miami's offensive coordinator, of course. But Dawson thinks he's got another number 1 overall pick. Nakos notes that Beck and Cam Ward are 2 different types of quarterbacks, but there is confidence around the Miami program about what the Georgia transfer can accomplish on the field. Another source went on to tell On3 that the belief inside the program is that this year's Miami roster is deeper and more complete than last year's. And that's certainly the sense that I get being out there with the big upgrades, especially happening on the defensive side of the football, the area that pretty consistently let the Hurricanes down last year. One of the reasons why Cam Ward had to put up the gigantic numbers that he put up was Miami had to sometimes score points in the 40s and in the 50s even. Remember, they beat Louisville 52-45. Like, they had to score essentially over 50 points just to win that game. Hopefully that's not the case this year. You know, my major keys for Carson Beck heading into this season, you know, compared to what he did last year at Georgia, and I know that there were other factors there, his receivers leading the nation in drops for one, but things that I feel are key for Carson in Miami's offense, obviously keep the turnovers down this year. It's okay sometimes to check down or throw it away. And I think that's been a big emphasis of the way Carson has performed in Miami's practice, that sometimes he's taking checkdowns, but he's processing really quickly, which I think is one of his superpowers as a quarterback. He goes through his progressions very fast, which is a really good thing. But it's okay not to go for the jugular on every single play. He probably was pressing a little bit too much last year at Georgia, got frustrated with all the drops. Oftentimes at Georgia last year, didn't have enough time to throw. With Miami's offensive line going up against primarily ACC defenses, I mean, we saw Cam Ward sometimes last year had 10 seconds to get rid of the football. So Beck is going to get that sort of treatment this year. I think it's really going to help him not have to press as much. So, and I think Carson can definitely cut down the turnovers. He threw 12 interceptions last year, which was too much. I think he can cut the turnovers down the same way Cam Ward cut his turnovers down last year at Miami. Had too many turnovers at Washington State the previous year, was able to cut those down in Shannon Dawson's offense. I think that Carson Beck can do the same thing. And, you know, something that I already see Carson doing, and we'll see how it translates into actual games, but Miami offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson gives his quarterbacks a ton of autonomy and a ton of input on the offense. And I hope Beck takes advantage of it. And I think he is. He's really engaged. His football IQ is really high. So I think he will. Cam Ward took advantage of it. Tyler Van Dyke the previous year, not so much. But I think Carson Beck is going to be, you know, really collaborative and take advantage of the autonomy that he gets from his offensive coordinator. So that's Miami's quarterback situation. Meanwhile, in South Bend, they've got a competition. Someone appears to be pulling ahead in that quarterback competition. It's not the one we thought it was going to be a few weeks ago. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. My friends, August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day. It's a brand new holiday for football fans who live for the bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So take a flyer on the MVP race. Guys, I'm feeling good about Lamar Jackson this year. That is my dude. Or you crown your champion in August. I hate to say this as a Dolphin fan, but I feel like this might be Buffalo's year. Maybe I'm just getting, you know, the hard knocks is filling me up with false hope in Buffalo, but I think this could be the year they get over that hunch. Folks, visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day only. That's August 26th. FanDuel, play your game. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack and I take you around the conference. We're doing a lot of football previews this time of year. It's a lot of big games week one. Miami versus Notre Dame, LSU Clemson, Florida State Alabama. A lot of big week one games involving ACC teams. We're keeping you covered on all of that. Locked On ACC is available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. This is interesting with Notre Dame with their, not having a clear starting quarterback yet. And honestly, I give a ton of respect to the Fighting Irish. It's a damn good football team. They should be stacked, both lines of scrimmage. Their defensive backfield should be stacked, and it's going to give Miami's receivers a really hard time on paper. They've got, probably the best running back situation in the entire country. We're very bullish on Miami's running back room. Notre Dame, one of the few, maybe the only team that has on paper a better running back situation than our Canes do. But if we're looking at an area that could be a vulnerability, it's the fact that right now Notre Dame apparently has two quarterbacks, which usually means you don't have a quarterback when you have two, and neither of their guys who are competing for that starting job have any experience to speak of. At the start of fall camp, and I'm obviously a long way away from South Bend, but at least the national sentiment was that redshirt freshman CJ Carr was probably going to be the guy. It was going to be his job to lose, right? That was the buzz when Steve Angeli, after spring, transferred out of there, that it seemed like Carr was the guy who was emerging. But based on, the first week and a half, 2 weeks of Notre Dame camp, most of the buzz is now behind Kenny Minchey, that he's pulled ahead of CJ Carr because of his legs. The Carr probably has the better arm, but Kenny Minchey has the legs. He's the dual threat quarterback. So signs are pointing to Minchey being the leader at this moment to start that game against Miami on August 31st. And I would also say that with, Minchey's ability to run, it's probably a better fit for that offense. Notre Dame OC Mike Denbrock, he had Riley Leonard as his dual threat quarterback last year. And, of course, quarterbacks who can run present more of a unique challenge to a defense. Miami historically, I don't know how much history is going to matter with the group they have this year, but historically, Miami has struggled sometimes with running quarterbacks in the past. A lot of teams do. So let's hope that for this year, if you do face Minchey week one, or heck, they might both play, right? I mean, I wouldn't completely say that that they wouldn't, use a two quarterback type of system, that even if CJ Carr would start, that they would bring Minchey in certain situations. So you have to be ready for that. But let's hope on the Miami side that having fast and explosive linebackers now on the team, like Mo Toure from Rutgers, Bobby Pruitt, who's extremely fast and explosive, that can help you, kind of limit and hopefully shut down a running quarterback if that's what you face. Now, the good news here is, and I say this even though there's this, I don't even want to dignify this by putting the graphic on the screen, and I'm also too lazy to look for it at this point, but there was this Notre Dame media account, like an X account, who wrote this tweet where they compared CJ Carr to who was it? To Joe Burrow. They compared CJ Carr to Joe Burrow, and they compared Kenny Minchey to Cam Ward. Like, wait, what? So you're telling me you've got Cam Ward and CJ and Joe Burrow in your quarterback room? It's a little bit of a crazy comparison that they made, but I guess they were trying to say that's the play style, that the play style for Carr is like a Joe Burrow, and the play style for Kenny Minchey is a Cam Ward. I mean, listen, if they've got Cam Ward 2.0 back there, Miami's in huge trouble. I don't expect that's going to be the case, though. So neither of these guys have any experience, really. I mean, Kenny Minchey has attempted 3 passes in his career. True freshman year where he kept a red shirt, and redshirt freshman year had 1 pass attempt in 2023, 2 pass attempts in 24. So 3 pass attempts on his resume, while CJ Carr, a redshirt freshman, has 0 passing attempts at the collegiate level. So just wanted to let you guys know the sentiment right now out of South Bend is that Kenny Minchey could be the guy, but there could be misdirection. Maybe they want me to think a certain way. Coach Freeman is scheming against Donno on this one. He's putting out the smoke screens, but we'll obviously know more before August 31st. And I want to let you guys know, before August 31st, we're going to do a crossover episode with Locked On Fighting Irish. Tyler Wojak does an incredible job covering that program. I mean, I go to his show sometimes to get information on what Notre Dame is up to. So we're going to do a crossover episode at some point before August 31st. So we'll let you guys know all the critical matchups and give you the intel on both sides heading into that week 1 matchup between Miami and the Irish. Meanwhile, I was reading through an article on ESPN.com where they put out a list of second-year college football breakout candidates, players who are just going to go to the moon in their second year. They've got Julian Sayin, the quarterback of Ohio State, at number 1, which, makes sense. He's stepping into a pretty good situation there with Jeremiah Smith to throw the football to, with Caleb Downs playing defense. But they've got Miami's Jojo Trader. They've got him high on their list at number 4. Miami's second-year receiver, Josiah Trader. They say, quote, Miami fans may have expected more from Trader a season ago as the number 6 receiver in the ESPN 300, but he was part of a very experienced and productive receiving room. He had only 6 receptions on the year, but did start the Pop-Tarts Bowl and made 3 catches for 61 yards and a touchdown. That flash will become more consistent this year for the Canes. Trader is 6'1", with smooth, fluid movements and quick hands to pluck the ball on the run for big gainers. He's a legitimate 3-level threat. Trader will team up with tight end Elijah Lofton to give Miami 2 breakout stars on offense for Carson Beck to work with. And, Trader last season, I think, was also a little bit banged up, affected by injury. So he's got to stay healthy and be healthy, of course. But yeah, you guys know I co-sign on that one because, going out to early fall practices and dating back to the spring, Trader to me was, the most consistent playmaker in the receiver room. I think Miami has some other ones though. And so, all right, if I'm thinking, I'd love you guys to help me with this as well. Leave your comments below, or you can leave me your X posts at Alex Donno on X, who you think the second year breakouts are going to be. So these are guys going into either their true sophomore or redshirt freshman years at Miami. Obviously, I agree. Jojo Trader is a big-time candidate for that. The next one that I would go to is another one that they mentioned there on that ESPN story. I think Elijah Lofton is going to be in for a big year this year. He was, essentially Miami's 4th tight end last year, but had 151 receiving yards and a touchdown, also had a rushing touchdown. And when you watch practices, Elijah Lofton is literally all over the place. He's lined up in multiple different spots. He's a Swiss Army knife on that offense. Very versatile, very good blocker, also very good in space with the ball in his hands. I think he and Carson Beck are going to connect early and often throughout the season. So Elijah Lofton, who, is going to essentially go from tight end 4 last year and still produced to tight end probably 1 or 1A this year, and it's going to produce a lot more looks. So Elijah Lofton, to me, a massive breakout candidate. A name I've already mentioned at least once on this episode so far, who I think is going to have a breakout second year, is Cameron Bobby Pruitt in Miami's linebacker core. He is a live wire. Like, Bobby is really physical. He's really quick. He's got a nose for the football. I think Bobby Pruitt this year, who, got some playing time last year, especially on special teams, I think is really going to shine this year on that defense. I'll go with probably an even more obvious choice for my next one. I think he's going to be a starter this year. Defensive tackle Justin Scott, heading into his second year. This is someone who has clearly emerged as one of Miami's top 3 defensive tackles. I think he'll play a lot. David Blay, the transfer from Louisiana Tech, who spoke to the media this week and, talked about how he's really honing in on his conditioning because, that Miami humidity hits different, but he's adapting to it. And Ahmad Moten is another one in that top 3. But Justin Scott, fair to say he has the highest ceiling out of all 3 of those guys with his, big frame, former 5-star recruit. The athleticism is off the charts. I think Justin Scott, things are starting to click for him, and I think he's going to be up there. Another second-year guy. And remember, these are only second-year guys. So if you're saying, hey, where's the love for Hayden Lowe, or where's the love for Josh Moore? Those are first-year guys. We're talking just second-year breakouts here. I think Marquise Lightfoot is in a similar situation. I don't think he's going to start on the edge. Miami's got Ruben May and Akeem Mesidor, but Lightfoot, he's put on some weight. He's added some strength. He's been a problem sometimes, in a good way, a problem in practice. I think Lightfoot could break out this year. And another one, I'm not sure if he's going to start, but he's been practicing so well at safety. Dylan Day, heading into his second year, I think could end up being a big-time factor this year. So those are some of my additional breakout candidates. Elijah Lofton, Cameron Bobby Pruitt, Justin Scott, Marquise Lightfoot, Dylan Day. I didn't include, second-year guys like Jordan Lyle, because he's already broken out. Same thing with O.J. Frederick. They had their breakout years as true freshmen, but some of these players that I think are going to join them on that breakout list this year. Let me know what you guys think, and let me know in the comments below. Second-year players you think are going to take their game to the next level at Miami. We'll answer some of you guys' questions on the other side. Plus, Miami has a new, very famous, very wealthy fan. Maybe we can get some of that money funneled into the Canes connection, funneled into the athletic facilities. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. We're certainly not done with Wayfair. Guys, as summer winds down, there's something nice about getting back into a routine you love. And Wayfair makes it easy to set yourself up for the season ahead. From bedding and linens to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair is your one-stop shop to refresh your home. Folks, this is the perfect time for me to get my home ready, whether that's organizing, upgrading my workspace, which I take very seriously, or making weeknight dinners easier. Folks, get organized, refreshed, and back to your routine for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure for your next listen you check out the portal. Our good friend Brian Smith, the recruiting overlord, takes you through all things NIL, recruiting, and transfer portal. I know we're going to have some more conversations probably with Brian and without Brian about Derek Cooper. Miami is they're still putting the full court press onto the Chaminade Madonna standout 5-star running back who is verbally committed to Texas, but he's going to be at that Miami versus Notre Dame game. He's going to be in the visitor section. We'll see if Miami can try to take the next few months to try and close there, to try to pull off a flip. So we'll be keeping our eyes on recruiting all throughout the next few months. It's National Signing Day in December. It's going to be here before you know it. Time really flies. How about this? I know he's a polarizing figure, but I could say, like, I've been a UFC fan and a mixed martial arts fan. I used to do a lot of shows about MMA. I've kind of gotten so busy with the college football stuff, I had to take I had to put that kind of on the back burner for a while. But I'm a huge fan of mixed martial arts, and Dana White is the outspoken UFC president. He is extremely wealthy. In fact, the UFC has just inked a new deal with Paramount Plus that's going to start next year. So he's rolling in dough. And Dana White, I guess his daughter is now a student at the U. She just enrolled. I think she's going to be on campus this year. And Dana was on the Pat McAfee show earlier this week, and he says he's becoming a Canes fan and that he's going to be attending the Miami versus Notre Dame game. So Dana White, welcome to the U. And it's fun to have as many famous Miami fans as possible. Danny Ramirez from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, having him as a big-time Miami Canes fan is always a fun thing. Dana White is joining that club. And listen, from what I understand, Dana has been for the past several years a major financial donor to Bishop Gorman High School in Las Vegas. He's like a big booster to Bishop Gorman, which, of course, Miami has gotten players from there, Elijah Lofton, Brevin Jordan, S.J. Alofai Tuli. It's become a little bit of a Vegas pipeline. So maybe Dana being here can help that pipeline because he's got the Bishop Gorman connection. And also, can we please get some of that UFC money into the athletic department, right? I mean, we're trying to finish the expansion of the indoor facility. We're trying to get the new coaches' offices green lit and built and all that. Just saying, if you got a few extra coins under the couch, Dana, we could use some of those. Maybe send him Canes Connections way as well. So I thought that was cool that we got a new big time Miami Hurricanes football fan in the form of UFC President Dana White. And I'm going to be at that Notre Dame game. Maybe I'll run into Dana. We can do an interview with him out there. We get a question from Ponce, who says he's one of our Locked On Canes insiders. By the way, if you want to become an insider, click the link in the show description below. Try it free for 14 days. Then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. Ponce says, hey, a few years ago, you called it in camp that Miami had issues at wide receiver, specifically drops. Last year, you mentioned the inexperience and depth as a possible problem at DB, and both times you were on the money. Not to be the Debbie Downer, but are there any areas of concern in this year's camp? Ponce says. Yeah, so he's referred. So it was the 2022. You remember the Josh Gaddis year? Except for Xavier Restrepo was the only guy catching everything. Every other receiver was dropping stuff in practice. Last year, we all knew the DBs could be a problem, and they were a problem. I don't see, to answer your question, Ponce, I don't see anything glaring this year. All the question marks this year are hypotheticals. Like, I haven't seen anything in practice where I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. Like, it's not like that this year. And it goes back to what, Pete Nakos said in that quote that we read earlier, that, Miami believes that they have a deeper roster top to bottom than they had even a year ago. We all know what the question marks are. Do they have enough depth at defensive tackle? Do they have enough experience at wide receiver? But I'm pretty pleased with the way that those groups are performing in practice. It's just, again, seeing is believing, right? I know we had that. The one listener doesn't like it when we say they've got to show it to us on the field, but it's true. I got to default to that. Everything looks good so far training camp. We actually have to see how it comes together in a couple of weeks against Notre Dame and beyond. We get this question from Bob in Louisville, who's one of our everydayers, who says, hey, Alex, there's a ton of hype this year. So many people are talking about how Cristobal seems more calm and confident. Carson Beck looks amazing. D-line and secondary are killing it. Receivers look ready, etc. You've been around football a long time. If you take off your Miami hat, how do you see this team? That's a good question. So if I just approach this, if I were to look at Miami's program from the point of view of someone who has no rooting interest, which I obviously have, and I'm an alumnus of that university, I would say that Miami looks incredibly talented and that this could be the year that they break through. But I can understand from the outside looking in why people are hesitant to say Miami's a playoff team or Miami's a legit contender to beat Clemson out for an ACC championship, just because Miami has this, history that goes back now about 20 years of underperforming and underachieving, right? It's the reason why Akeem Mesidor wears that T-shirt that says enough, because he's had enough of that narrative, right? He wants to reset that narrative, but it's out there. You can't change it. You can't change the fact that Miami had everything in front of them last year. All they had to do was beat Syracuse when they were up 21-0, and you're in the ACC championship game. You're probably in the college football playoff, and we blew it last year. And we've had, moments like that. So too many to count over the last 20 years. So if I'm looking at Miami from the outside looking in, I can understand that even though Miami looks incredibly talented, people have their doubts as to our team living up to what they should be on paper, because we tend to love it or hate it. You probably hate it. We tend to underachieve. So I get it. That's probably how I would look at it from the outside looking in. But I do believe that it really takes a few years to reset a culture. And if you look at the type of young men that Mario Cristobal has recruited, the type of men he's brought in through the transfer portal, I mean, heck, within the last 2 weeks, we had transfer center James Brockermeyer on the show. I mean, what a mature competitor he is. And we had true freshman Hayden Lowe on the show a couple of days ago. He's 18 years old. He talks like he's 25. He's so incredibly mature. So these are the types of, not only the types of football players, because, yeah, they're all getting bigger and stronger, the players Mario's bringing in, but he's also bringing in a really collection of mature, grounded young men. And that's what you need to turn a culture around. So I believe Miami is on the cusp of breaking through, but that's me with my Miami hat on. If I were to take that off, I would say, fine, show it to me. So I guess that's how I would answer that question, that, anybody on the outside looking in, you see the way people react. Like, Miami comes in top 10 in the AP poll and the coaches poll. And, a lot of the comments are like, Miami overrated. How do you put them in the top 10? They haven't won anything. Like, you see comments like that. And the only way to get those losers to shut up is to go out there and win. That's the only way to get them to start taking Miami seriously. Until you do that, people look at Miami like, Texas A&M of the past several years. Really talented, but they just don't break through. So let's break through this year. That's all I got to say. And I think they can. I think this could be the year that they do it. Get myself a little worked up. I need a nap. I want to thank you guys so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods, subscribe on YouTube, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow. And I know Saturday, we're going to have a special episode and talk about, famous Miami fans. Michael Yo, who's a really successful comedian and former, big time radio DJ. He's a Miami guy, a huge Miami fan, and Michael Yo is going to join us on Locked On Canes on Saturday. And also, I'm really excited. In a few weeks or a couple weeks before the Notre Dame game, I'm going to be teaming up with Michael and a few others like our pal Gio Million for a live podcast at the Dania Improv. I think that's going to be the Friday before the Sunday Notre Dame game. So exciting stuff coming up. I can't wait to talk to Michael. He's going to join us on Saturday here on Locked On Canes. Make sure you stay tuned for that. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.